Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. Clark Wickliffe, current city council for Midlothian and candidate for District 10. How you doing, Mr. Wickliffe?
I'm doing great.
Am I saying that right?
Wickliffe, yeah, or I'll take
Okay.
Wycliffe.
Why we'll go Wyclef with you, right? So you wanted I wanted you to go ahead and introduce yourself to people who may not know you.
Yeah,
Obviously the census said we got a lot of new people. So go ahead and tell me about yourself.
yes, sir. Well, for those who don't know me, my name's Clark Wickliffe. I was born and raised in Midlothian, Texas. Um, I've spent my whole life here. I graduated from high school here. I started my business here. I have a cattle ranch operation that started here and then moved to Navarre County. Land got expensive out here. um, but yeah, no, from that, I married my high school sweetheart, Mackenzie. And we have two beautiful kids, Leland, who's 4, and my daughter, Channing, who's 3. Um, and like I said, my family's been here since about 1860. And then I decided to run for city council, or I actually started out serving at 18. I was appointed to the utility advisory board for the city of Midlothian. And then somewhere around 2019, I started serving on the, or no, I'm sorry, 2016, I started serving on the Parks Board, and I was elected somewhere around 2019. Been serving for 2.5 years on the city council after.
So you started this early. That's 18 years old. I mean, at 18 years old, I was marching. I definitely would not have been good for anything but marching at that point. I needed that. But I mean, 18 years old and you started in this, you must love your community.
I do. That's the whole reason I got involved. I absolutely love my community. Like I said, started out on the utility advisory board, moved over to parks, and I had a real passion to make a difference because all of our boards in Midlothian are purely advisory, didn't have any power. And I chose to take what I thought I could do to make a difference for Midlothian and ran for council and started implementing those. And I'm proud to say I kept all the promises I made during my campaign. So it's great to serve on such a great city, on the council for such a great city.
It is a great city. So I wanted to go ahead and go into like fundamentals.
Yes,
And
sir.
I go into those fundamentals with all the candidates. And I do that because, you know, if your fundamentals are off, then everything else doesn't matter. Whatever question I give you, if your fundamentals are off, it's just not going to make sense.
Yes, sir.
So, what is the role of state government in the lives of the people of Ellis County?
The role of government, in my opinion, is to protect my God given rights. Not to give me my rights, but to protect my rights. Along with education, Texas has always talked about education. If you look at the federal government, in fact, there's nothing in the federal government like the Constitution that speaks to education, but on the state of Texas, we've always been pushing for education. Now, I have a quote from Thomas Jefferson I always like that says the purpose of government is to enable the people of a nation to live in safety and happiness. Government exists for the interest of those governed, not for the governors. And I've always liked that quote as well.
Yeah, that it definitely it definitely rings kind of, you know, it's definitely something that most people share, those kind of liberties like that. So your thoughts on, you know, our second amendment and our first amendment, if you could kind of just tie those together and
Yeah.
tell, because the role of a house member in the state of Texas will affect the citizens of Ellis County in those things. So can you tell me your thoughts on those?
Yes, sir. I am pro 2A all the way. I, I, I don't see um, any reason to infringe on those rights. And the same thing with the First Amendment. And I would never do that while I was a legislator.
Excellent. So let's talk about issues.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Um, and one of the first ones I'll bring up, like I brought up prior this week, is property taxes.
Yes, sir.
Property taxes affect everybody, and I've said it before. You know, if you have to lose your home because you didn't pay your taxes, or you couldn't pay your taxes. No, you didn't. You couldn't. That is wrong. That is wrong
Yes.
on all kinds of levels. That you could pay your mortgage, but you can't get the taxes in. So, I wanted to talk about that. What would you specifically sponsor or write or legislation that you would put up to help with the property tax situation in Texas?
Yes, sir. Good question. So while I was on the Midlothian City Council, I've lowered the tax rate every single year while I was elected, and also serving on a municipal level showed me a lot on taxes and budgets for city government and other governmental entities. So, what I would do while I was a legislator is, first and foremost, I think we can all agree that taxes are high and we need to correct that issue. I have what I call a step process. You can't just say we're not going to do any more property taxes overnight. That's unrealistic. The city of Midlothian has a $40 million budget. We have debt. We have to be able to pay those. You can't just say no more taxes. So step one for me is I have a idea or three ideas I think or two ideas. I'm sorry that would work. Which one is a property tax freeze, which is where and this is a fast term solution to and while we work on the long term solution, which would be to freeze your taxes at the current assessed value on all homesteaded properties. The second idea sounds a lot like the first, but it's a little different, which is where we would freeze your home assessed taxable value at purchase price. This is not a long term goal. This is for fast, immediate relief while we continue to work on the long term goal. I've heard ideas that other people have said about a consumption tax or a sales tax. The reason a consumption tax or a sales tax won't work currently is for cities like Milford or Italy or any of those other cities that don't have large sales tax revenue generators. For example, the city of Midlothian, 1% of sales tax to us is around $4 million. So imagine on a sales tax of 8.25%, how much that sales tax would have to go up to cover a $40 million budget. When one penny in Midlothian, and that's just in Midlothian, it changes on the revenue across the cities, but for just Midlothian would be 1% is $4 million. Another thing I would have is that I would like to implement is a VA tax relief. So basically, what it would be is an exemption off of your taxes. So if you're a 10% disabled veteran, we would give you of course, your homestead exemption, but then a 10% exemption off of your assessed value as well. And if you're a 20% disabled veteran and down on the road, to give relief to our veterans, but also give the other things that I mentioned in the beginning would give immediate relief to all homesteaded property owners. Like I said, that would be step one. This is a step process. This isn't something I think can be fixed overnight, but this will give us immediate relief while we continue to work on property taxes and a long-term fix.
It sounds, as a veteran, it's singing to my ears. Um, so taxes do play a role, and um, the other thing that's going on right now, definitely as it affects Texas, is the Democrats having left uh, and basically stopped the quorum over the voting legislation. What are your thoughts on the voting bill as it is written, and would you change anything?
I wouldn't change anything, and I support the bill. And to kind of loop it all into taxes, because I know border security is important as well, bringing that kind of back around with there being basically a large influx of illegal immigration. I think border security is very important. When we talk about taxes, well, with such an influx of people coming to Texas, that puts a lot of pressure on our infrastructure, our schools, our hospitals, our roadways. So I think border security has a large player in helping reduce taxes as well, because the more that come in, the more impact that is on the infrastructure, the more tax dollars needed to upgrade that infrastructure.
So, since we're talking border security, we'll go ahead and go into that subject.
Yes, sir.
What would you propose or legislation that you would support to deal with the current crisis on the southern border? Because, like I've said, that the role of the states and the feds when it comes to immigration are pretty clearly defined. But what would you propose to that would be different?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, everything's a step process. I think the long term goal would be a secure, strong border wall, but that takes a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of infrastructure. So I think that's the end goal, correct? But day one to help give some relief would be more personnel, more boots on the ground. I think we need to hire more DPS to help us with the border security until we can, as we're working on the goal of collecting the funds and the infrastructure to finish building the wall and creating it more a secure border.
One of the subjects, or one of the things that came up in earlier interviews, was with the wall, the problem of possible imminent domain. Now, imminent domain might also be an issue with the high speed rail. So I want to get your opinion on the high speed rail. Would you vote in favor of it or imminent domain pertaining to it?
No. So since I've been on the city council, luckily we've never had to eminent domain anybody. We have had done projects, and we've always been able to come to terms with the property owner, which is a good thing. That's what we should want to do as a government. We should never want to forcibly take anybody's property. As far as the high speed rail is concerned, I am not a fan of the high speed rail. I've seen multiple maps of it. I've even talked to some families. Like I said, we have a place in Navarro County. It was coming through Navarro County. I know it comes through Ellis County as well. And for one example, this family had 100 acres and it was going to cut it up into 50, 50, 60, 40, something like that. And the way it was going to work for them to go to the other side of their property, they were going to have to leave the property and go down into the city, go under the only bridge because the height of the rail was going to be off the ground, and then back around to the other side of their property. And what makes Texas so great is interstate commerce, and I can see that being an effect on commerce from one side of the county to the other, as far as one side of the state to the other. And so I would not support the high speed rail or the eminent domain of the properties for the high speed rail.
Okay. Um, so one of the things that are affecting definitely has reared its ugly head again, and that would be COVID. The numbers are going up. There was reports of more trucks being ordered down in San Antonio. The state is having some issues with this,
Yes, sir.
according to the news.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts on COVID? What is the role of the government in this public health crisis, and what would you propose? Anything?
So, my wife is an emergency room nurse at Parkland, and whether it's real news or fake news, I
Excuse
know.
me. Can you tell her I said thank you?
Yes, sir, I can do that. They are definitely getting overwhelmed and overrun, but also that's because of a lot of the illegal immigration they're bringing to Dallas as well, going back to the stress on the infrastructure that illegal immigration has. Um, the As far as COVID, I am against passports, the vaccine passports and mandatory mask. I think the shutdown showed us that it was ineffective and would not support another shutdown. In fact, Midlothian, I think, did the best response. We basically did no response. We said, continue as normal. We're not going to sit here and tell you how to live. You're an adult. And I think that's the role the state needs to play. I think we need to, as a state, make sure that we have the medical devices needed, and the materials needed to help fight COVID. But other than that, I think it needs to almost be a hands-off approach. We are all adults and can govern ourselves.
What is the adopted role? Now, one of the adopted roles of government has been schools. And there's been a lot of debates at school. There's some ESSER funds coming, and that I've been watching some board meetings. COVID affected, how students learn, and it affected special education. And those are things like special education. Those are things that don't get the funding that they may need. What can the parents of Ellis County expect from you as far as getting tax dollars down from Austin to our schools?
Well, I will definitely fight for more funding from the state to our schools. The worst thing that most government, the federal government, the state government does is go, here's a list of things we want you to do. We're going to enforce it, but we're not going to give you any funds for it. That's got to stop. That we can't get. That goes back into the tax relief issue we talked about earlier. The more mandates the state puts on the schools, the harder. And for me, I want to get schools back to teaching the basics. In some studies, Texas is ranked around 13th, and others is 37th. Depends on who your source is. I want to enhance our education. I want to get us in the top 10, and I want to help fully fund schools. I think for a state, that's what would be the best is for us to be in the top 10 on education. Um, I also want to help teachers. I want to fix the teacher retirement program. Right now, if you're a teacher and you retired after working 22 years for a school district or 25 years for a school district, and you want to go be a bus driver, the state is going to fine the ISD for that teacher getting a part-time or full-time job after retirement, and that's ridiculous. That needs to end immediately.
Fair enough. Some money for schools would be good. And what you were saying, unfunded mandates, special education definitely has a problem with that. They require a lot and they fund very little.
Yes, sir.
So let's go into another subject, and that would be veterans. One
Yes,
of
sir.
the things that you know that I've seen in other states are where veterans get tuition waivers for college, disabled vets. Um, is that something that you could see yourself support? Well, what besides that tax benefit, what do you think would be some of the things you'd like to work with veterans issue? I mean, maybe their the PTSD issues from returning vets and etc.
No, definitely. So obviously, the biggest thing I would push for is the tax break I mentioned earlier. That's kind of my baby, right? My idea. But the uh, as far as the tuition, I would definitely be open to that and looking into it. I haven't done too much studying on what it would cost for the free tuition of veterans, but I would be definitely. I'm a humble person. I'm willing to listen and show me the data, and then let's go from there. So I'm definitely interested in looking at that.
Well, that's good. Being open is a good trait, especially at a time when we're all yelling at each other and
Yes,
nobody's
sir.
listening. So let's go into marijuana. So I brought up marijuana, and I'm going to bring up marijuana to all the candidates. I don't know the studies. I am not a scientist. Anecdotally, I know veterans who have gotten off of opioids and medications that they tossed at us after the Iraq War, and and were using marijuana. Other states have legalized it. Is that something that you would support in any form?
Um, yeah, I think for medical use would be something we could definitely look into, and I think that the legalization of marijuana has so many strings attached. Um, at what point, how many ounces or grams is it? Not safe. We want to make sure that it's not laced with anything. How do you regulate it? How do you make sure it's not dangerous? How do you tax it? Because they're going to tax it. And quite
Yeah.
honestly, if it becomes legalized, we should tax it. If we're going to give more property tax relief and more funding for schools, then let's tax it. Um, and give property tax relief and other tax relief in other areas. So I'm definitely uh, for looking at it and interested in it, especially for the medical side.
What I've seen is that a lot of states they rushed into it and they didn't think about some of those intricacies with that and taxing it and regulating it.
Well, so
Um,
I'm also a small government guy. So on one hand, I'm like, oh, you know, get out of my business. And on the other hand, I'm like, well, okay, I understand why there needs to be regulation here. And I think trying to make sure they dance together is what we need to focus on.
I can definitely understand that. Now, is there is there something that you would like to do? Day one. Have you thought about what would you do day one if you were elected as our House District 10 representative? Excuse
Yeah.
me.
No, you're fine. So I have my own things that I would like to get done, but I'm also uh, I'm not running this race for me. I'm running it for the people. I want to get done what the people want to get done. So yes, I don't want to say I have an agenda, because I do and I don't. I have things I would like to get accomplished while I'm there to provide relief to my district. But at the same time, I'm not running this race for me. I'm running it for every single person who lives in Ellis County. And I want to get done what they want to get done. But if I had to pick one right now, I would probably push really hard on the property tax reform, and the tax exemptions for the veterans would be what I would push the hardest for day one. But like I said, I have things I want to get done, but I mostly just want to hear from everyone in the district and get done what the district needs done.
An issue, one of the other issues that I wanted to discuss was criminal justice reform. As you know, we can't keep building prisons. People who need to be in prison need to be in prison. I understand that. But there are a lot of people getting out. And like recently, um, I was able to work something out with the Texas Department of Licensing to work with recent inmates that reenter society. Um, is that something that you would consider looking at, or what does criminal justice reform look like to you?
Well, I think criminal justice reform and the legalization of marijuana kind of go hand in hand. If you're going to legalize marijuana, then small, sorry, my mind went to blank there. The lower crimes, right? Are probably not going to have that much in our jail system anymore. Those who are held up for low possession of marijuana, or today it's considered high possession, but if we legalize marijuana, it might be a different story. So I think they kind of go hand in hand together.
The definitely there's been effects, and different sociological studies have shown that drugs and incarceration, they go hand in hand. I I definitely I definitely hope that you look at something like that. Criminal justice reform is important. Now, um, in this closing, I want you to go ahead and I want you to talk to the people of Ellis County and tell them why they should vote for you as their representative. This is your pitch. Go ahead and talk to the people.
Well, I was born and raised here. I have deep ties here. My kids go to school here. I work here. Hope to get my wife working here soon. But I think what stands out for me and the rest of the field, and you're seeing it across the country, is younger conservatives finally stepping up and wanting to demand a seat at the table. One, because most conservatives have always been reactionary. I don't want to be reactionary. I want to be an actionary person. I'm young. I have a lot of energy. I want to go fight for my district in Austin. I have turned down all the PAC money. I'm not trying to be owned by a PAC. I'm not taking any money from PACs. I'm my own person. I will not be bought. And I'm going there to represent truly this district. I have no other need to run other than just out of the pure heart of wanting to be a public servant. If I lose this race, then I will just go back home with my wife and kids and continue to live in Midlothian. But I am going there to fight for every single resident as a true average resident, not being bought by the PACs or the big influencers, just to go represent every single person and no special interest groups.
Well, that's definitely good that you want to serve. I respect that very much, and I've told other people that have come on. I respect that you want to serve and continue to serve your community. Being a politician is not easy. You have to make these really tough decisions, and the reality hits you really fast. So I wish you the best on your race, and people, make sure you get out there and vote. And I have Mr. Harrison rounding out the candidates coming on Friday, and I will be talking to him and asking him questions as well. I appreciate you coming on, Mr. Wickliffe. It's been a pleasure, and good luck again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Make sure you guys watch. And a real quick message to the vets. I know it's been a difficult time lately, but you didn't serve for the politicians, you served for your country, and I really appreciate your service in Afghanistan and the war on terror. You take care.